So I'm going to talk quickly about collaborative work to reduce consumption of sugary drinks and increase consumption of water. This is work that we've done over a handful of years here. And, we mostly did it by way of education, policy both at the organizational and municipal level. And then I'll talk about some of the next steps we're working on. So, as you can see here, using sort of the best practices of public health, particularly from the framework of dealing with this at many levels, the environmental context, looking at how we change the environment by way of policy and legislation, by way of changing organizational wellness policies, doing this work through building coalition and networks, leveraging our shared expertise and resources, educating folks that are direct service providers, promoting community level education by way of a citywide campaign. So the Sugar Pack campaign that's pointed out here, that was our first level of citywide education, where we put up billboards across the city saying, you wouldn't feed your child 22 packs of sugar. Why are you serving it to them in a drink? Just to begin developing folks awareness around the amount of sugar in these drinks. And then the next phase of that campaign was Open Truth. And you could find more information about that at opentruthnow.org. And that was primarily targeted at young people who are the heaviest consumers, and also primarily targeted at youth of color who are the heaviest consumers, and helping them to understand both the impacts of drinking that much sugar as well as industry tactics to target specific communities. And then sugarscience.org is not only our citywide effort, but worldwide effort, because it's a web-based effort available to everybody. And what's important about Sugar Science is that we found that the science is very heavily influenced by the industry. So, for example, an industry-funded piece of research will be 5 times less likely to state that these products contribute to obesity and disease. And so what Sugar Science does so powerfully is that they pull together unbiased science, not paid for by the industry, and present to us that objective understanding of the research. And then at the individual level, we've got the biggerpicture.org, which is also a web-based education campaign, but in addition to that, and there's some really powerful videos, I recommend you check it out. It was a partnership between scientists and youth poets to more powerfully communicate these science messages that often come off dry, because we as scientists, we don't communicate as powerfully as young poets do, certainly. But then, at the clinical level or out at community events, we had folks mobilized to get the community level education out. So collectively, citywide, UCSF partnered primarily with the Department of Public Health and local hospitals, but also with community-based organizations and other health advocates to say, what can we do to better coordinate our efforts citywide? We are a resource-rich city, lots of nonprofits, lots of work being done to serve the community, but we found that we could do a much better job of coordinating those efforts, sharing measures of disease as well as measures of success. And so SF-HIP, San Francisco Health Improvement Partnership, is one effort to do that, and you can find more information at sfhip.org. And I should say that addressing metabolic disease disparities in sugary drinks and water consumption was one of the priorities of SF-HIP. And then Shape Up San Francisco Coalition is another citywide coalition looking to leverage the power of partnership to advocate for better access to healthy foods and better access to environments that encourage people to be more physically active. And you could find out more at our website there. So multi-stakeholder efforts included policymakers, all of these civic and community-based agencies. And so multi-stakeholder provided opportunities for each sector to hold our own stake in this, right? So here, for example, is the launch of a citywide effort to do education. So the impacted communities, this was hosted in one of the more heavily impacted communities, the Tenderloin community. And what those communities did in partnership with us is they convened folks that they serve, residents, to help us understand resident perspective about the best approaches to reducing consumption. We did focus groups in 2014 to learn from those communities that consume more of these products what they'd like to see happen to help them reduce consumption of sugar, increase consumption of water. They partnered with us to develop organizational policies at YMCAs, Boys and Girls Clubs, churches, and other community-based organizations. And then they helped partner with us to do community education through lay health worker workshops and then the bigger picture effort. Universities. So you all, like us, have this opportunity to leverage the rigor of academia to support community-based efforts. The community has a great perspective about what works in their own communities, developing education efforts from their own perspectives, et cetera. And then certainly universities have a role to play in leveraging the rigor and discipline of the academic approach to, in this case, health. And sugarscience.org is a great example of leveraging the power of a university to help address a public health problem. We also leveraged UC Hastings College of Law to help develop health policy locally. You may be familiar with the soda tax effort, but there are other policies that I'll talk about shortly. So universities help do new research. For example, the focus group research of several years back, the current research that Laura talked about into the impact of organizational policy at the university. And Laura and other scientists of UCSF went down to City Hall many times at the request of local policymakers to talk about our understanding of the science behind this. Once again, the science of health harms and the science of policy approaches. We help with evaluation so folks can evaluate, for example, their community level interventions. How well did they do with their lay health worker programs, for example? We can help them design evaluation and have helped them with that. And then, of course, we place students to help communities. We've had medical students go out into Boys and Girls Clubs to provide education in ways that have been very powerful. And then Sugar Science, as I mentioned before, provides what we consider to be authoritative education materials, unbiased by industry. Public health departments, like our local Department of Public Health, help to promote education at the clinical level, as well as citywide. So this Sugar Packs campaign I referenced was funded and hosted by Departments of Public Health in Alameda County, Sonoma County, San Francisco County, in order to make sure that regionally we were getting this word out by pooling our collective and limited resources. And They built the capacity of our lay health workers. They provided training for our lay health workers at the community-based organizations to get the word out. They provide technical assistance and data. So we created maps for folks to understand which communities were more heavily consuming this stuff and which communities were more heavily burdened by disparities in metabolic disease, or what many folks know as obesity-related disease, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, for example. We use the data that the Department of Public Health provided us. And then, as I mentioned, pulling folks together in coalition is really important, and the Department of Public Health provided staffing for that. Policymakers can do a lot. We had our local policymakers call for a budget and legislative analyst report on what the economic impact of consuming sugary drinks was for the city. It was about $54 million per year in medical costs related to diabetes alone. Didn't include the costs of like children's oral health impacts and the impacts to retirees that are city employees and others. So it's actually a conservative number. They convene hearings around not only the economic impact of sugary drinks to the city, but also hearings around what the city is doing to get folks access to clean water and making sure that folks are drinking public water. They proposed legislation like the soda tax, and they served as local spokespeople for all of this work because they have the platform in the public eye. They convene town hall meetings so that folks in communities could participate in the conversation. And then they allocated public dollars for things like public water bottle filling stations, which became a part of our effort several years in. So we got the soda tax passed, as you may know, and that's going to not only reduce consumption, we hope. We didn't get the amount of tax per ounce that we believe the science pointed to as best for a reduction in consumption, but it's a beginning, and it's also a tremendous opportunity to raise revenue to pay for things like water bottle filling stations, nutrition education in schools, etc. Berkeley, of course, did the same, as you all may know. They led the way. And then other policies that were developed by both being informed with the expertise of our scientists at UCSF, but also informed by community-based perspectives. 3 city policies that included, well, I'll talk about that in a sec, but also, UCSF citywide policy, and then our main county hospital also adopting healthy beverage policy. And the 3 policies citywide were a ban on use of city dollars to purchase sugary drinks, a ban on use of city property for sugary drinks ads, but our city attorney dropped that for fear it wouldn't stand up in court on free speech grounds. And then thirdly, which was the first in the nation, warning label on advertisements of sugary drinks within SF. And a lawsuit was filed by the soda industry to keep the city from implementing that. We'll find out in April whether that'll stand or not. And then we also did organizational policy, where we leveraged a couple of organizations to provide support for organizations like other hospitals and community-based organizations wanting to adopt healthy beverage policy. And we helped with evaluation citywide. Lastly, we've been focused more on water. So access to water. Folks in low-income communities told us they didn't trust public water coming from the pipes in their homes. They're often living in public housing, which is older housing stock, and they're sending their children often to schools that are in older buildings, and so they don't trust the safety of pipes. And so we partnered with the city. The city invested resources in providing these, as you can see a picture here, these types of bottle filling stations citywide, which folks in low-income communities told us they prefer to water fountains. And then the city also is funding lay health work for water promotion. And it's done with these communities, Asian, African American, Latino communities at the community level, designed and delivered in ways that are appropriate to each community. And next steps for us are to develop regional collaboration on water equity, help the city of San Francisco implement its soda tax advisory, and educate this new cohort of policymakers about the relevance of these issues, and then dissemination, which we're doing now, make sure that others have access to this information and could perhaps learn from our experience.
I just want to interject a couple things. One is, we know you're all chomping at the bit to hear Leanne tell you how to get a sales ban on your campuses. But we've been, there have been two constituencies that have approached us for assistance in how to roll out a sales ban. And one is health systems and hospitals, including the National Health Service of the United Kingdom. So there's a real movement, a lot of momentum in the health sector internationally, and as well as in the U.S. And we're trying to support other health systems in doing sales bans. The other constituency, a much smaller group, has been other universities. We've been working with Sydney University in Australia and our own UC system around rolling out sales bans. And the issues for universities are somewhat different from those for health systems. But when we talk to universities, the reason we did is to just demonstrate the amazing potential universities have to reach outside the walls of their own walls and engage with partners in their immediate communities, and then scaling it up to state and federal, or provincial in your case, and then federal levels. And so I think that universities, because we have, as you pointed out, the faculty expertise often in these areas, we carry a lot of legitimacy in debates where there's a lot of junk science out there. We really do have this potential to impact communities beyond just our own. And our sales ban was part and parcel of a much broader effort to influence, and went right along with efforts to influence our own city, and then even more broadly. And we encourage other universities to do the same. I know you guys are very progressive on these issues. The folks in Sydney are amazing leaders, showing a lot of leadership through evidence to policy work and community engagement. And then I just wanted to let you know that this week in the Center for Disease Control and Prevention journal, Preventing Chronic Disease, we published a paper that provides the model that we used for our sugary beverage work, and how academic institutions can engage with not just communities, but also politicians to move the dial on health issues. So that's it's free online. Just go to the CDC website, Preventing Chronic Disease, or Chronic Disease Prevention, or we can share copies of the article with you. But it provides a little bit of a how-to for some of what Roberto described.
Thank you, Laura. We're up next with Leanne.
Okay, great. So I have just a few slides to help summarize the operational perspective or standpoint of this, but I really want to make this helpful to you guys. So please stop me at any time and ask any questions. I'll also leave time at the end for questions too. But I'm going to speak in a very general terms about this, because I think every organization is unique. Like, I couldn't give you a cookie cutter answer to why this happens, but you might have seen on that previous slide that our mission was advancing health worldwide, where it still is. But that's one key thing that we leveraged the entire time in this initiative, was that we need to be a model of our mission. And we really stuck to that, and that was a huge selling point for us. So this slide here just demonstrates kind of some of the efforts we were doing in wellness before we embarked on the Healthy Beverage Initiative. We did guest lectures where we had people come in and tell us how to eat healthy, or that soda was bad, or that fried food was bad. We did chair massages to help people relax. We did cooking classes, educational workshops, but really we were missing the mark. So go ahead and hit next, Roberto. And what we really realized is that we were not addressing our built environment. And that's kind of how this Healthy Beverage Initiative idea came about. We said, how can we be really impactful with something? How can everybody who walks onto our campus, regardless of who they are, actually experience health through something? And what can we do first? Next slide, please. And so this is a video, and I'm not sure if it works, but I'm going to go ahead and play it. Let me know if you guys can hear it.
Leanne, actually, we have the link. Play it on our end. It'll work better.
So we'll go ahead and skip this then, unless you want to play it now.
I can just hit play.
Yeah, we'll just play it right now.
Okay, great.
Okay. Here we go.
At the University of California, San Francisco, advancing health worldwide is our mission. As a renowned health organization, it is important. A main factor that prevents many from living healthy lives is excessive sugar use. It is recommended that men, women, and children limit sugar consumption to live a healthy life. A 20-ounce bottle of soda contains around 16 teaspoons of sugar, which far exceeds everyone's daily limit. Sugar scientists have discovered that sugar-sweetened beverages are a main culprit of the problem. This is a beverage that includes added carb sweeteners such as energy drinks, fruit drinks, sports drinks, and sweetened coffees and teas. With over 60 names, added sugar can be hidden anywhere. That's why it's easy to consume more than our daily allowance. Too much sugar doesn't just make us fat. It can also make us sick by overloading critical organs, increasing the risk of diabetes, heart disease, and liver disease, even in people of normal weight. Sugar-sweetened beverages are the leading source of added sugar in the U.S. and make up 36% of our added sugar consumption. The average American consumes 45 gallons of sugar-sweetened beverages a year. We want to do our part to help our faculty, staff, students, patients, visitors, and members of our community to be healthy. As of November 2015, we will only be selling healthy beverages on campus. However, anyone can still bring their own sugar-sweetened beverages. We believe a healthy environment helps produce healthy decisions. That's why we continue to develop programs like Smart Choice to help identify healthy food options. As a global leader in research about the effects of sugar overconsumption, we are glad to join this ever-growing community of progressive health. For more details about a Healthy Beverage Initiative, visit healthyBeverages.ucsf.edu. Living a healthier life. Now that is.
That's well produced.
Yeah, so the point of that video and the reason I wanted to show you guys that was because, well, one is how we really communicated to our community. We really wanted it to be fun. We didn't want a bunch of people up there talking about the harmful effects of sugar and scare everybody. We really wanted to have a positive spin, and I know something like this, to us health people, it's a positive spin, but it doesn't necessarily to everybody. So that video really helped us in many ways, and we showed it pretty much to everybody we talked to. So just quickly, what is the Healthy Beverage Initiative? I want to point out that this is the elimination of the sale and service of sugar-sweetened beverages. And that's important because, as the video pointed out, anyone is welcome to bring or drink their own sugar-sweetened beverage. We are not going to be policing people at the door. We are not going to be opening up their purse or their backpacks and say, show me what's in there, and take away their soda that they choose to bring them on campus. However, as an organization, we also choose what we want to sell and what we don't want to sell. And that was really the message to senior leadership from the very start. You know, that we are not here to police individuals. We are here to make our environment the best we can. And then this happened on a can you go back, Roberto? This happened on a 16-week time frame, so we started the launch July 1st of 2015, and it was completed November 1st. So what that means is it took us 16 weeks to remove all the sugar-sweetened beverages off the shelves. As Roberto mentioned earlier in our talk today, we have, I think, like 100 buildings at UCSF across San Francisco, and it took us time to remove them off the shelves. This also gave us an opportunity to do a rolling cascade of our communications as well. We couldn't necessarily reach all 30,000 people at once, so we broke it down into a 16-week time frame and made sure we got to them before their drinks were removed. And of course, we spent a lot of time before this time period educating our community about this Healthy Beverage initiative coming down the pike soon, which you'll hear about in a minute. And I do want to point out, this includes all of our vending machines, our hospital cafeterias, our campus eateries, as well as our retail locations, and all catering services, as well as even patient menus had these changes. Next slide, please, Roberto. So, you know, when I first rolled this out, and even since we've been doing some webinars and talks like this, like Laura mentioned with other organizations, we often get the question, why sugar sweetened beverages? Why not Snickers bars? Why not cookies? You know, why are you picking on sugar sweetened beverages? And really the answer is easy. It's the low hanging fruit. There is zero evidence that shows that liquid sugar is good for you. There might be, you know, a debate about an oatmeal cookie having some nutritional value. There's some fiber in there. Oatmeal has some, you know, nutrients in it. But there really is no evidence about a soda being good for your health. And the thing that I really pointed to, too, which is out of sugar science, is that not only people who are overweight are at risk for things like liver disease and diabetes, but also people of normal weight can get sick from these items as well. Next slide, please. So, you know, again, I want to note that this is not a ban, and we really made that point when we were talking about this. I really tried to never use that word ban, even though it is by definition a sales ban. I continuously called it Healthy Beverage Initiative, and I'll tell you that is probably one of the most important things you could do is pick your words wisely. No matter who you're talking to this topic, make sure you don't use that word if it truly is not a ban. If you're not going to be policing people at the door, I think that's really important. People want to maintain their freedom of choice, and I'll tell you, it was the first thing that came up right away when this word started leaking about this was, oh, you're like Big Brother, you're taking away my choice. And so we made sure we got ahead of that concern right away. We also wanted to promote healthy options and a plethora of options. Just because we were removing something, we didn't want people to focus on that. So we decided to offer a bunch of alternative options, which you'll see in the orange, and these are generally categorized here. 100% fruit juice is acceptable under our beverage initiative, as well as diet soda and artificially sweetened drinks. And the reason for that is because the evidence really is not equal to that of sugar. And until that catches up, we really couldn't say for sure that there is harm. We do know that some studies do show early signs of that, but we also wanted to be realistic. So we know we have night shift workers and people need to stay awake to do surgeries and whatnot, and they don't drink coffee. And they said, we really need our caffeine fix. And so we wanted to, you know, do a little give and take. And so we decided to keep the diet soda for both of those reasons. We also categorized our smart choices in the blue, and we're heavily promoting and still do heavily promoting those because we know that those items are with no doubt, you know, beneficial to health or not harmful to health. Next slide, Roberto. I think we might have lost him. Uh-oh.
He's right. Oh, he's
There we go.
Woo! Just in time. Next slide when you get a chance. Okay, so here's a list of our campus vendors. We have over 20 campus vendors you'll see here. I don't know if the same applies for British Columbia, but we have Subway, Panda Express, Jamba Juice, many chain restaurants, and we also have food trucks. I know you guys mentioned that. And I do want to point out that all of our food operations are voluntarily participating. So my team and I spent a lot of time getting these people on board. And we really felt like it was important that they were our partners and not being forced to do this. So we never ripped up any contracts and started over. Everybody's on a different contract cycle, some 5 years, some 10 years, some 2 years, depending on when they came on board and just the nature of their agreement. But it was really important to us that everybody got on board, and somehow we did it. And we made them feel like they were part of our team and advancing health just like doctors. And that was really the education message that we gave, you know, like what people put in their bodies here on our campus, you know, educates them when they go home. And, you know, also our doctors were telling people, our patients, don't feed your children soda. That's why they're gaining weight. And then they walk out of the clinic door, and right next to them is a soda fountain where they could have bought, you know, a big gulp. And we didn't feel like that was, we weren't bridging the gap. So this really allowed our vendors to have that opportunity to partner with our physicians and our science. Next slide, please. So I put together a list of kind of best practices or things that we found to be successful on how we made this happen. So first of all, our senior leadership really appreciated the fact that we modeled this after another successful organization. So that might be helpful to you too, to point to. We pointed to University of Michigan. They only went as far as eliminating the sale and service from their hospitals and not from their campus. So we were the first to do both. But the message there to senior leadership was, don't you want to be a leader? And I think they really bought into that. We had to create a very clear and detailed definition of a sugar sweetened beverage. That we did that from the very start, and that really helped because automatically people were saying, well, what classifies a sugar sweetened beverage? What about tea sweetened with honey? Are you going to keep sugar packets? Are you going to allow a milkshake that's made on campus, which is made with ice cream? Is that technically liquid sugar? So you have to be really detailed and really think about every possible scenario that could arise. We really, like I said, got senior leadership buy-in early. That was the #1 thing we focused on at the very beginning, and we could speak to that as we went around to different campus constituents to vet this idea and to get their feedback. We could say senior leadership is in agreement that this is a good idea, and now they want to know what you have to say, or you know, now we just want to run this by you that this is coming. So really not giving the audience the opportunity to weigh in or to influence it, because senior leadership have already made the decision, but we do want people to feel like they are part of decision making. So there's a careful balance there. And then address and understand potential early revenue changes. This was in part important to our CFO. He wanted to know how much money we were going to lose, and no matter how much Laura really came in and said, this is the science, this is why it's important, we're killing people here, he still wanted to know that. And so we provided a really extensive packet of information based on University of Michigan's findings about how much they lost in revenue at the beginning and then regained, as well as how much we were currently making on those drinks. Be clear about the why. So we really forced the why down people's throats, but I think it really spoke to them, especially given that we're a health sciences organization. Well, I was surprised that a lot of people still didn't understand it. I thought everyone knew that soda was bad, but even nurses and different health providers did not really get that from the beginning. So don't make assumptions is my point there. And really point to, you know, we have an opportunity to improve people's health. We have an opportunity to be a leader, and we need to stand on this mountain of evidence. And we educated and educated and educated and communicated again. And I think that was really important. We wanted people to hear this message not once, not twice, 3 times. We wanted them to hear it from us in person, in communications emails, from our senior leadership, through flyers. We really just went all guerrilla on this and really wanted to have it everywhere. And we had a set timeline and we really stuck to it. I think, you know, when you tell people you're going to do something, they really want to see that happen. And one other reason I put this bullet up is because a few people will push back on you. I don't know if you guys have experienced this yet or not, but we did get a few naysayers. And my suggestion or recommendation to you is don't stop. Just because you get a couple pushbacks, keep going and find those advocates, find those people who do believe in this, and use them as leverage. And that's why I go back to that senior leadership buy-in. Know who to go to at the beginning so that you can speak to that and have them be your advocate the whole time. And then address freedom of choice from the very start. Again, I think this is super important. It was one of the first things we said every time we went into a meeting. We tried to go to management meetings every day for 6 months. We tried to hit every single management meeting we could at UCSF. We were running our tails off. But the very first thing we said right when we walked into the door is that this is not a ban. And then immediately people could just put their walls down and listen to you. And I think that is super important. So I think one more slide. I just wanted to show you a few marketing materials that we used. We wanted to be colorful, positive, diverse, and so this is different ways of saying cheers. We have a few other that I couldn't fit on here in different languages, but this was to educate people when the drinks were going to be removed, and that there was a link to a website that they could go learn more. We also had produced some pamphlets that were at the point of sale at every single restaurant, cafeteria, or eatery. And in those pamphlets, it said, for questions, visit healthybeverages.ucsf.edu. And that really took the burden off of the food service providers. One of the biggest concerns that we heard from the food service providers was that they were afraid they were going to get a lot of complaints from people coming to buy drinks and couldn't anymore. And so we spent a lot of time educating the service providers and saying, just tell them to come to us. You should never have to answer any questions here. Hand them a pamphlet. Just keep handing them a pamphlet and say, I'm really sorry for the trouble. Here's where you can find more information and someone will get back to you. And we had an FAQ, and we also had a place where people could leave comments, and we would reply to all of them. But overall, I'd say we had maybe 12 negative comments the whole time. And I really think that was mostly because my team and I did a good job of visiting as many people as we could in person so that we could speak to it rather than have them make their own inference based on things they might have heard.